FanDuel posted their UCLA over-under win totals. Do we think the Bruins will hit it this year? Let's debate it here in 2023 on Locked On UCLA.
You are Locked On UCLA, your daily podcast on the UCLA Bruins. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome, everybody, to the Locked On UCLA podcast. I'm Anderson-Yoxsimer. Thanks for making this your first listen each and every day. It's free wherever you get your podcast, and it's available on YouTube. So like, comment, and subscribe over there. Become an everyday listener. Yesterday, we talked to UCLA Hoops with the late news that 2 Bruins hit the transfer portal, and then maybe they're getting 3 guys back. We'll talk about all that in weeks to come when it actually happens and if it actually happens. Talking of 2023, FanDuel recently posted their over-under win totals for all, if not most, of college football. And with this segment kind of brought to you by FanDuel, the UCLA Bruins are expected to have an over-under of 8.5 wins in 2023. And what's unique about this situation is the fact that the Bruins will have a lot of unknown heading into fall camp. We don't know who the starting quarterback is. We can assume who might be the leading candidates to start at running back and receiver, but nobody's truly been named an outright starter at any position. At broadcast college football before, I've known coaches who will not announce their starting quarterback until week 1, even if he knows in August or, in May or April. And Chip Kelly's not one of those guys, considering it's somewhat of a slightly heated battle between more than one guy, more than 2 guys. Dante Moore, Ethan Garbers, and Colin Schley. You've got quite a few running backs making their names known, a very talented wide receiver room, and still a defense that needs overhauling. So while there is talent, there is some factors that we don't really understand. But I do think UCLA will get very close to that win-loss total, that win over-under total. So let's get to it. I've kind of done this before, but we're going to talk about it now, especially with spring camp over. And now that we know what the Bruins pretty much have, getting some late offensive linemen in the portal, bulking up the roster, and the talent for the most part is shown that during spring ball, they're ready to roll. Here are what I have as UCLA wins. And this isn't exactly in chronological order. I'll try my best, but this is who I have UCLA beating. You've got Coastal Carolina week 1, which will be a very intriguing matchup. One, because Coastal Carolina's quarterback, Grayson McCall, is coming back. He hit in the portal. I even thought UCLA might make a play at him. They went after Colin Schley. McCall ended up not going anywhere, even though a few weeks ago there were some rumblings. Potentially he might flip to Auburn. At the moment, he is the Coastal Carolina quarterback, pulling his name out of the transfer portal in early January. So there is Coastal Carolina. It'll be a good one defensively for the Bruins to test to see, can they stop that up and down offense? I think the Bruins get it done in the Rose Bowl. I think anytime they play Cal at home, I think they should beat Cal. UCLA, what could be the last ever meeting for a long time of a long-standing rivalry, I think UCLA should handle Cal. When it comes to the Arizona schools, I know they lost to Arizona last year, and Arizona State's always kind of funky, but with the new coaching change over at ASU, you're not sure what Dillingham's going to bring just yet. A lot of switches over there. And then at Arizona, I think the Bruins will go back-to-back years getting wins in the state of Arizona. So I think they'll sweep the Arizona schools. It'll be tough, but I do think they'll get those 4 wins. I think you can bank on a win against Colorado. A lot of things going on with Prime and all those things. I'm just not entirely sure that Colorado will compete next year, at least in that game. I would expect UCLA to take care of business, especially at home in the Rose Bowl. At Stanford, they've got a new coach, Troy Taylor. And while they might be building, I just don't think Stanford should really compete in that game. The Bruins should win that one. And then you've got the 2 other non-conference games, San Diego State, at Snapdragon. That should be a very fun, rowdy environment against the Mountain West team. Even though the Bruins lost to San Diego State for the first time ever, the last time they played early on in the Chip Kelly era, I do think the Bruins can get a work away with a win. And then North Carolina Central, it's another HBCU FCS program. The Bruins should take care of that. So those are what I counted to be, if I do my math correct, 8 wins. Now there's 4 toss-ups and ones that I might be leaning towards a loss. But one note to make. In the non-conference, there's no Power Fives. When they move to the Big Ten currently, although there was a report a couple days ago by Brett McMurphy and then written on 247sports.com about the Big Ten mandates that each team has to play a Power 5 non-conference opponent. If UCLA had to do that this year, they might be looking at 7-5, maybe 6-6. But moving into the Big Ten going forward, looking that they might drop that, UCLA might be able to play a San Diego State year in and year out. Unless San Diego State moves to the Pac-12, then that would still be a Power 5 opponent. Then you've got Coastal Carolina. You got all these games, these 3 non-conference games that are non-Power 5 foes, which is where if you're a UCLA fan trying to see if they hit that FanDuel over-under win total of 8.5, then they've got to win these non-conference games. And going forward, until the Big Ten officially, I think, removes that ruling, they still have that mandate in place. And with how tough the Big Ten is going to be, adding UCLA and USC to that lineup, that'll be interesting. But that's just an interesting note to talk about schedules moving forward, how it'll be even tougher, or they might still be able to lighten the load in the non-conference. Back to this year's schedule, the 2023 Bruins have 4 extremely, well, I guess maybe they're all extremely tough. Pac-12, especially even the Arizona games will be tough, and Coastal Carolina and at San Diego State. But these are the games I think will be super tough. At Utah, obviously. Wazoo at home is sneaky, sneaky tough. At Oregon State, that's a team that got DJ Uiagalelei. And then you got at SC. I think that speaks for themselves. So while I haven't chalked them up all as losses, and you have to expect UCLA is going to lose at home, that's just kind of what they do almost, every year. There's no way they go unbeaten if they don't get a lot of support at home. I think if there's going to be a home loss, it'll come to Wazoo. Utah will be interesting depending on the health of Rising and how good they are, the 2-time defending Pac-12 champs. And then going to Oregon State, the new, I think, fully renovated Research Stadium, and at SC. Those are games you can all chalk to losses, potentially. You can debate with me about all these games, even in Arizona or Coastal Carolina. I just think they're hovering around 8-4, 9-3 this next season, which makes this line and why people who make these lines are so tough. The Bruins have those 3 tough road games, and while they were able to get big wins last year, they still struggled down the stretch, and they're looking for that first 10-win season under Chip Kelly. And while I think they have the talent to hit above that win total, 8.5, they absolutely do. They play great football. If they're complementing both sides, then those are things they can blast past that 8.5 easy. There's just quite a few tough games. I think 3 very tough road games, 4 of the 6 or 4 of the 5 mostly, or I guess we got 4 of the 6, 5 of the 6 are sneaky tough ones, considering that's go to San Diego State. I'm thinking they're 8-4. So hit in the comments, hit on Twitter, 8-4. I know I did this a few months ago, and maybe it's the same, a little bit different, but sitting here in the middle of May, and mind you, we're all sitting here, you might just put in the comments, hey, we don't know who's the starting quarterback, which is why it's still fun to speculate anyways. We don't know who's the starting running back. We think it's Carson Steele and all the receivers and who will be healthy come week 1. But at the moment, I'm sitting 8-4. They can easily blow past this with a very good quarterback play. Very good. If they have a good offense, this team can easily get 9 to 10 wins. If the defense plays just marginally better than they've done the last few years, just keep going better, get key stops, then with the new defensive coordinator, this team can be very intriguing, just like they were last year, just not as old with the DTRs and company. So I'm thinking 8-4 at this moment, and that I reserve the right to change that bad boy when they finally name who are the starting players, starting position players, starting quarterback, everything. We'll find all that out coming up. So if you like that, comment 8-4, 9-3, 10-2, 15-0. Hit it in the comments, 1-14 or 1-12, whatever you think, 1-11. Hit the comments as we cruise on. We're going to talk UCLA softball because they struggled a little bit in the first round of their Pac-12 tournament hopes. Yet we'll see what they're looking like coming up. In the meantime, Built Bar, well, they're a great protein bar. You should go get a Built Bar. Go check out your local Walmart. Go check out Built.com, even a Sam's Club. They are a perfectly healthy tasting protein bar. 100% real chocolate. They're healthy and they taste amazing. And they've got churro, peanut butter brownie, cookies and cream. I'm not sure how they do it, but Built makes a candy bar that's actually a protein bar, but it's not a candy bar. It's healthy for you. Only 4 grams of sugar, but 17 grams of protein. Go get a specialty box. Go mix the flavors, mix and match. Have some fun at Built.com. You'll thank me later. Brownie batter peanut butter puffs or brownie batter puffs, churro puffs. Those are fantastic flavors. Go check it out at Built.com. Second segment, Locked On UCLA. Well, the softball team has just been absolutely cruising in this last couple of weeks, last couple of months. They're 51-4. They just knocked out Arizona from the Pac-12 tournament. They take on Stanford later tonight, the May 12th game in the semifinals out in Tucson. So they knocked out the host of the Pac-12 tournament in the quarterfinals. UCLA, in a back-and-forth game, actually trailed twice against the Wildcats. They sent Megan Faremo to the mound, or not to the mound, obviously, to the circle, and they're down 2-0. The Bruins responded with a Maya Brady home run. Then they're down 3-2 late in the fifth. Got a home run from Megan Grant to tie the game, and then another Maya Brady home run, who technically had the first multi-home run game in Pac-12 tournament history, this being the inaugural tournament. Brady with the game-winning blast. Then the bottom of the fifth with a Pac-12 player of the year. Of course, she's going to step up in the biggest moments late in games. As UCLA struggled in this single elimination tournament, this is one of those times where, despite Faremo, who's now 29-2 in 38 appearances, you're going against Nets, who kept the Bruins at bay. She pitched a complete game. Overall, she fell to 16-16. Despite the fact that Arizona is just hovering above 500 in a very tough Pac-12 conference, that's how easy the Bruins can fall in one game, whether it be in a Pac-12 tournament scenario, one game, one off, just to get all the glitz and the glamour of TV. And that's how quickly and easily they can get picked off one game in the regional. They're super regionals. They're heading to the Women's College World Series. That's why it's a little better that those are double elimination as opposed to the beginning of this. Looking at Faremo's totals, what was interesting from what I noticed is she went 7 innings, gave up 3 runs. She had gone 5 or 6 straight appearances without giving 3 or more earned runs up and only struck out 7. We've seen this Pac-12 pitcher of the year who has been absolutely dominant at times this year, just flat out 15 strikeouts, 13 strikeouts, 13 strikeouts. It has been rare for her to get rocked while she's pitching. One of the things I noticed, Faremo, why she's been so dominant this year, through 140 pitches, mind you, against Arizona, probably wouldn't expect to see her against Stanford. She had, in her 38 appearances, times where she's given up 3 or more earned runs. She's done that 5 times this whole season, closing in on 40 appearances this year. And the time she's given up 3 or more earned runs, which, if you give up 3 or more earned runs, still go 6-7 innings. It's a very quality start. But when it comes to postseason play, you want your aces to give up 1 or fewer, keep you in the game. And that's how dominant she's been. So someone who's seen her for a second time, third time, one wonders how that will change going into the postseason, expecting your best pitcher to pitch like it. So Faremo, quote unquote, rocked, giving up 7 hits, but still very solid, 7 Ks, 2 walks, was able to mix and match and grind through the opening round of the Pac-12 tournament. And that's what you got to do, especially in a single elimination format where it's not like anything else you'll see in the NCAA tournament, only made for TV, just to get more exposure and get more Pac-12 teams playing to hype up the NCAA tournament. But still, you'd love to see the Bruins win again. They are 51-4, and they've won 24 in a row, and I don't think they've lost since the month of March. They've been flying through the competition despite some late home run wins against the likes of San Diego State and then Arizona. Speaking of a team that's going to be playing for their season, UCLA Softball, that's not their case. They're not playing for their season. Right now, it's just the tune-up before they go play for their season. This weekend, UCLA Baseball is playing to keep their season alive. Not officially in the Pac-12 tournament, but unofficially for an at-large berth. So cruising on into segment 3 of Locked On UCLA, the UCLA Bruins are taking on the top 15th ranked Oregon State Beavers, who's almost always been a perennial powerhouse since around 2005, 2006, when they went back-to-back championships. They won one about 4 to 5 years ago, and they've been generally a very competitive team, one of the best in the country. And I've seen this Oregon State team. They're not the best team. They're not the best, flashiest Oregon State team, but they're a very good team. They play sound defense, some sneaky, tough pitchers, and they can swing the bats very well. It's generally, that's how they play it out in Corvallis. Overall, the Bruins are sitting here. They're going to send to the mound Jake Brooks, Kelly Austin, and Ethan Flanagan. As John Savage had talked about it earlier in the week, how they've been dealing with injuries in the rotation. They've just flat out been unable to keep teams in the yard. In Oregon State, they can hit a lot of home runs. They can send it out of the ballpark. I broadcasted a few of their games earlier this year, and they were smacking the ball out of a somewhat pitcher's park in a colder environment. One wonders during some night games in Westwood at Jackie Robinson how Oregon State will fare. And quote-unquote prime time against UCLA, but can the Bruins keep the ball in the yard? This is a team who earlier in the week, according to the College Sports Madness bracketology, if you will, in baseball, has them as one of the first teams out. The Bruins are one of those teams who have found ways to lose games more than they found ways to win games. Sometimes it's the offense, and when it's not the offense, it's the pitching, and when the offense finally breaks out, they're down way too much late in games. That has been the struggle. And UCLA is 45-42 all time against Oregon State. But under John Savage, they're 21-30, because Oregon State's been good these last couple of decades, 15 years. And if you remember last year, they had the epic games. And while it's not exactly the anniversary of it, might as well bring it up. The game at Scottsdale Stadium in the Pac-12 tournament when the Bruins were down 9 in the bottom of the 9th inning, tie it down in the 10th and hit a walk-off home run, only to blow it in the bottom of the 9th against Oregon State in the if necessary game to get to the Pac-12 tournament championship. Yeah, a little different Bruin team. In terms of guys who have been heating it up, you've got Deuce Gorson, who's got hits in 8 of his last 10 games. You've got John Vaughns, who can leave the yard at any time. And there's someone who's been playing really well, Jack Hallman, who has hit home runs in his last 4 consecutive games. He's hit 8 home runs in his last 15 games. And he has been going absolutely bananas swinging the bat. But can the Bruins get the combination of strikeouts, get outs, get strikeouts, get hits, all in the right format? UCLA baseball this year, 18-4 when scoring first, 10-1 when they score in the first inning. So the key for the Bruins this weekend, and generally going forward, is they like to be front runners. When they're playing from behind, the team hasn't been necessarily able to compete. And they're coming off getting swept at home versus Cal. They finally got a win. They beat Cal State Fullerton in a midweek that they had to win, because otherwise your record's looking a little closer to 500 than it is a winning ball club. And you're not going to be a 500 team that makes the tournament, at least not this UCLA team. In terms of what UCLA has, they have a 3.04 strikeout to walk ratio. They're 8th in the country, and they're 1st in the Pac-12. Yet their ERA, which is 2nd in the Pac-12, as a team, it's been the pitching that struggled so much. So if you look at these numbers, they have these game notes. UCLA has an ERA of 4.25, 27th in the country, 2nd in the Pac-12. And it's just funny how it's been the pitching that has been hurting their chances to move forward, because, hey, they have all these good numbers, strikeouts per 9, walks per 9, and yet it's just keeping teams in the ballpark that has been the struggle this year. They've only issued 140 walks, so it's not like their pitchers are throwing strikes. It's just these guys are getting lit up at the wrong moments of the season with the season on the line. If you win 2 out of 3 at home in your final 3 home games before you go spend 2 or a week and a half in Arizona, because you've got at ASU to end the year and then the Pac-12 tournament, this is winning time. You've got chances to build up your resume if you're John Savage and company. The emphasis is on getting wins for UCLA. They are 25-19-1. This is a team currently, if you're not paying attention to UCLA baseball, 10-12-1 in Pac-12 play, under 500. Oregon State is 34-14. Mind you, they're 16-11 in Pac-12 play. They're not that much better. They've just not blown games like UCLA has. Blowing the game to Utah where they had to take the tie. Not winning against Wazoo when they had an early lead in the snow, losing those couple of games, blowing games to SC late, and having a chance to beat Stanford. You win 1 to 2, 3 of those games, all of a sudden you're 28-16, and then you've got wins, series wins over Stanford and SC, at least a series split against a Washington State. You get 4 more wins, all of a sudden you're knocking on the door of 30. UCLA is only going to get to 30 wins if they win these next 2 series and get a win in the Pac-12 tournament. So missed opportunities throughout the season have been hurting the Bruins immensely this season. But in the end, you are what your record says you are. And despite injuries, despite some time without Kyle Karros, UCLA has to find a way to win these games. At home versus Oregon State, mind you, Bruins just got swept by one of the worst teams, if not the worst team in the Pac-12, in Cal at home. Swept at home with the season on the line. Now you got to go play 2 top 25, 2 top 15, 2 of the top teams in the Pac-12 at home and on the road, and expect them to win a series. Can they do it? Possibly. Are they talented enough? Certainly. Will they? I don't know. Only time will tell. But if they win this series, dare I say sweep Oregon State, then hope is not lost. And I think they jump back in the tournament field based on whatever projections you use. I think that would certainly earn UCLA some eye-popping, looks from everybody else. Hey, they just beat Oregon State. That would give everybody some credibility to love UCLA baseball again. So support them this weekend. They've got their last 3 home games of the year before they head out to Arizona. Coming up over the weekend, they got softball tournament. We'll talk about UCLA softball on Monday if you're an everyday listener. More basketball news as we expect some UCLA players. We talked Jalen Clark, Adem Bona, to both withdraw from the NBA draft. That is what the reports and what everybody is projecting from John Rothstein, LA Times, Bruin Report Online. We just have to wait till they actually do it and put pen to paper and whatever it is you have to withdraw until they announce it. It looks like it, and maybe we'll get a day more next week after a month of waiting for some sort of news. All that is coming up and more. And hey, UCLA football, they're going crazy in the recruiting trails. We've got all that and more on Locked On UCLA coming back over the weekend. As always, UCLA fans, hit the subscribe button on YouTube, comment in the comments, download wherever you listen to the show, and thanks for tuning in. A clap time, baby. And 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. UCLA. UCLA. Fight, fight, fight. This has been Locked On UCLA. Go Bruins.